Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly literally on the wall to everywhere. Thanks to these angels, thanks to the psychic sphere, we literally can look in anywhere. We can look into multiverses. We can look into timelines. We can look into the hearts of human beings. I mean, that's one of the best parts of this podcast is the diversity that we have the opportunity to look into. And today, I am welcoming you into 2022, gang. I mean, honestly, this is the year of expansion. We talked a lot about 2022 last month, and I really want to make sure that we're hitting some high points here, going into the way that we're going to be structuring, bringing forward this new world. And part of bringing through a new world, or as the angelic realm calls it, the original world, because let's be honest, before we pave paradise and put up a parking lot, before we did that, it was paradise, right? So we've had this paradise place that we really have not acknowledged. And I mean, I think a lot of us have acknowledged that in our own ways. For instance, I'm a Montanan. We love the outdoors. As you know, you've been following this on the podcast. My heart was absolutely broken as a forest fire that ate over 55,000 acres of land in the Beartooth Wilderness completely burned to the black, burned to the dirt, and then burned into the dirt all 20 acres of land that my wife and I have out on the back of the Beartooths. And that's just the way it goes with climate shifts. You know, in that area actually had not had a forest fire for over 100 and some odd years. So there was a lot of undergrowth, there was a lot of dried grasses, and a dude riding his dirt bike who was drunk, who popped a hole in his gas tank, lit a fire, and it burned down everything. And now he's in prison because you don't get to negligently burn down people's multi-million-dollar homes up in the Beartooth Mountains and just say, whoops, I'm sorry, I was drunk and I lit a fire. So, I mean, there's a lot of consequences, yet, you know, even then, appreciating the earth. And honestly, I wasn't complaining about our land. I love our land. Well, it's the earth's land, but I wasn't complaining about the land that we pay taxes on that belongs to the earth. However, I was more observing that, you know, it's high desert that's right up against a mountain range. So it's a lot of, really, it's a lot of grasses and sagebrush and very few trees. There's a few trees if you go a little closer to the mountains, but it's that high desert that's right at the base of big mountain ranges. So I might have bellyached here and there about just joking about all the tall grass and sagebrush, but it was gorgeous. I mean, all the wildflowers and the deep grasses and the deep greens. It was really, really pretty. And you look up and there's this giant mountain covered all over the place with trees. The trees are still there. They're just kind of little sticks of what they once were. So when we can appreciate what we have in the earth and we can appreciate what we're looking at, that's a big part of going into this time frame. That's a big appreciation for what we have in 2022 is massive. So we ended up learning a lot of lessons in 2021 about how to really turn around and appreciate everything and really, really connect with our great mother that we live on, because that's going to be a huge thing. It's huge for 2022. I mean, many of you have probably already seen the movie Don't Look Up, and it's on Netflix. I highly, highly recommend it. It is a fascinating satire. It's dark comedy that, you know, really, I wish it was a little less on the mark in ways, but it's so spot on. It's painfully hysterical, yet it's painful. And Leonardo DiCaprio has a great, great line at the very end where he turns to his family and he says, "We really had it pretty good, didn't we? You know, we had it good." And it's true. And we don't really realize how good we have it because we get too mired down in the old world's fights. And that's really what I want to talk about today is how do we separate ourselves going into 2022 to get into this original world. How do we separate ourselves from that old world? And it's not going to go out without a fight. Yet you're going to notice in 2022 that it really is dead and gone. So it's kind of like that one guy trying to bring back the leisure suit. Who's old enough to remember the leisure suit? Well, if you're not, let me tell you what a leisure suit looks like, okay? I want you to take packing popcorn and I want you to put it in a pot on the stove. And I want you to melt the packing popcorn. And then I want you to mix it with an avocado. So it's kind of like this pussy green color, kind of a sickly green color. The plastic turns this mushy green, okay? Then I want you to go and just find the hairiest man you can. Like the guy who escaped out of some very dark black project Pentagon science program who literally is part human and part simian. I mean, find the person who is carrying with them. Find a guy who is so hairy that from the back, you're dying to get pictures because you think you can sell them to National Geographic as Bigfoot, okay? So find that guy and then take your pot of melted packing popcorn mixed with your pussy avocado. Now, paint on this guy, but only down to his rib cage, what could be like a vest, okay? Make sure it's really open in the chest. It's got a big wide V. It only goes down to his chest like a matador, his rib cage, like a matador jacket. But there's no buttons that even start until his sternum, okay? Now this is so, there's a bunch of hair hanging out of the packing popcorn avocado suit. All right, are you with me so far? Okay, so he's got his belly hanging out beneath that. And the little avocado packing popcorn plastic vest is painted on to the bottom of his rib cage, like a matador jacket. Now you're going to go up and you're going to go ahead and paint really tight sleeves on. And you got to make sure the sleeves are just a little too short. All right. So pretty much look on the Bigfoot guy where his watch would be and take your plastic pukey green avocado spread and just bring it down his arms, okay, and just come right about an inch above the wrist, just an inch above that watch line, okay? So he's got on this funny looking plastic. It's hardening, by the way. It's hardening to his hair. He's going to have one hell of a wax job when he tries to take this thing off, all right? So he's got this plastic green avocado, super tight fitting matador jacket thing with a V down the front. The chest is all full of hair. But gee, we don't have any collars. This is kind of a weird looking thing, right? So what we're going to do is I want you to take what's left of your plastic mix because the rest of this is hardening all around his body. It's just this plastic coat. I want you to go up and over his shoulders, okay? I want you to start to paint a collar. Now, this wouldn't be like a normal shirt collar that just tucks right up underneath somebody's neck and rests on the collarbones. It's very important that you have enough of your packing popcorn plastic avocado mix left in order to paint completely over his shoulders as if you were making a triangular sail, okay? Now, this collar needs to be so big that it sticks out like a sail over his shoulder. All right. Now, I realize it's going to look a little awkward, but this is a leisure suit. So it's supposed to look hip and cool with these giant collars that go way out over the shoulders. Kind of like a sail on a spaceship, catching those neutron particles to fly through space. All right. That's a leisure suit. Now, if you have enough of that plastic green mix left, you paint some skin-tight pants on, except at the bottom, the bell bottoms have to be so humongous that the caricature of a 1974 pimp becomes envious, okay? That's a leisure suit. For those who don't know, now you do. Thanks for coming down memory lane. Anyway, there's a lot of plastic in a leisure suit. It's super polyester, and it probably will float. If you're in a leisure suit and the plane is crashing, you'll probably just bob to the top. So people can hang on to you as a life preservation mechanism. It's going to be fascinating. Anyway, getting back to the main topic at hand, I got taken offline there by the thought of designing. How would you even make a leisure suit today? I don't even know. The point is that we are delivering into our realm today a beautiful original world. And there's a lot of gratitude for our earth in this delivery. And, we can't go back in time. We got to go forward in time. I just recently posted a meme on my Facebook pages, Insta, and on LinkedIn about insights on change that I received. And look, I know we all know that change is the constant. We can always count on change. We all know that. Yet what really hit me is that, and it was through the help of these angels, is that change is an inevitability, and it's really a byproduct of remaining upright. In other words, if you're still alive, okay, and you're still surviving, and the longer you survive on the earth, you will witness the byproduct of change. Change is a marker for how long you've been around. It's a marker for how many, emotional hurdles you've chosen to grow through and overcome. So when I get a chance to look at the amount of change that we have in 2022, it's huge, which was then again, the big issue with the year of expansion. And for everybody on this podcast, actually, I was going to say for those who are signed up with the prosperity tier, actually everybody on this podcast is signed up for the prosperity tier. You guys get it just as part of being, podcast subscribers. I was talking earlier about the fact that we have a lot of pauses that are coming up in our finances. We already talked about that. This isn't going to be a financial podcast. Yet I'm just here to tell you that while we have these lulls going on, we are putting the original world back into place. And I was reminded very recently by a friend online that in February, the planet of Earth is having its Pluto. Pluto is doing a return on the planet Earth's astrology, at least on, not the whole planet, but on America's astrology. There's a Pluto return. And in America's astrology, that means that we are evaluating what America's been like since 1776, because we haven't had the same Pluto alignment since 1776. And clearly a lot has happened. And Pluto is the planet that rules illusion and the hidden and all these things. So in February, we're really going to have an opportunity, it really falls in line with these angels are talking about, to step up and evaluate our history and what hasn't worked for us and how we can bring the hidden out into the open. This is February. And I'm also seeing some correlations there with, the government coming out with what they found out about the January 6th Commission and all the things. So there's a lot we're going to be talking about, and you're going to notice that a lot of the old, nasty, old world behaviors, being rude, being crass, being crappy, attacking other people, all of that nastiness that was flaring before COVID. When we see it happen again, people are really going to have a hard time with it. People aren't going to engage it. People are just going to be like, wow, man, you need to calm down. The people who are going to be deciding to be the folks who propagate anger and rage and hatred and that old world bully 1980s, 1990s angry person, they're not going to get real far in 2022 and beyond. Because again, in part, this Pluto return for the United States is asking us, wow, what's worked and what hasn't worked since 1776? And there's a lot that's not worked. There's a lot that has worked, but there's a ton that hasn't. So we're going to get a chance to go ahead and create the country that we always wanted to create. At the same time, gang, keep in mind, my peace, love, and harmony United States of America is not necessarily the same peace, love, and harmony America that other people are subscribing to. Their idea of a peace, love, and harmony America is to overthrow the government, throw out the people that don't think like them, put God back in charge, but it's a very specific Christian God that has to fit into their parameters, but whatever God that is. And that's their idea of returning to the original world. Well, I think it's safe to say that the original world didn't even, at least in North America, really didn't have white people in it, except for the Vikings that came over and kind of noodled around and did what they did for a while. If we're to return the nation to the original vision that came about in 1776, we have to do it by ejecting the portions of the vision that don't work and by adopting the vision portions, which really were the points that supposedly were going to make the United States a bright, shining light on the hill. And I'm not a USA hater, for heaven's sakes. It's where I was born. I believe that all countries have room for improvement. We definitely have room for improvement. And quite frankly, we have enough money in this country to improve and have it not take one hink out of anybody's step, corporate or otherwise. Yet there's too much fear around that and all the things. So there's not enough podcast space to really get into the layers of what's going on in our United States government and why things are the way we are. We just have to take a big, giant Herculean brush the size of the Northern Hemisphere and paint over the USA and say, it's a big money issue, and just kind of leave it at that, because we will go down rabbit holes that would take years. I'm not even kidding. I literally am, I tell you this in earnest, I am so shocked all these years later with as much as I talk about, or used to, I don't as much anymore, but I used to talk a whole lot about how the United States spends its money, these I guess you could call them secret programs or black Pentagon programs, black meaning they're under the table, they're out of the light, that go and they reverse engineer UFO stuff, and they do all kinds of things that are really nuts, okay? And I'm really surprised I never had any little black cars roll up in front of my house, and I can see it now. Miss Egnew? Miss Egnew? And my dogs, of course, bark, 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 right? Miss Egnew, can we come in? I'm sorry, what is it I can do for you? FBI? Yeah, you guys have too many sunglasses on for the FBI. Homeland Security? Yeah, I don't know. There's too many cars for Homeland Security and the suits match too well. Land Shark. Okay, come on in. I mean, honestly, I see this happening in my head, but obviously I'm clearly not, obviously not a threat to national security. And I think the fact that I come out and say, hey, I'm a psychic and I translate angels, they're like, well, that's a crackpot. We'll just leave her right on alone. So the thing that does make me pause in 2022 is the way that the money is going to have a really hard time buying our government off like it always does. And again, this is an extremely detailed conversation, but we're just going to stay on the top levels of it to get to some other topics today. So the money's going to have a harder time. There's going to be the same cast of characters that take the big money. Those characters, gang, humans are humans. Weak and scared humans are weak and scared humans. They are in both political parties. They're in all political parties because now I can tell you that we have a lot more than just Republicans and Democrats out there. There's all sorts of belief systems all over the place in federal government. So when we're talking about money not being as important or not having as much of an effect, a big portion of that is because you have to remember, gang, that when we talk about big money, where do you suppose they get their money from? Do you think that Shell Oil has a beautiful grove of money trees that they lease in Mexico? And maybe they planted those money trees in Mexico because the bandwidth for the weather is a little more appropriate? Yeah, I don't think so. We are the money tree for a lot of the corporations that at the same time we turn around and we point our finger at these corporations and we say, oh, those evil big corporations and their evil big money. Well, where did the big money come from? We gave it to them. So it's really important to, and obviously we aren't the only ones with oil. I mean, that's a world commodity. However, the point is that when we talk about big money, we have to remember that it's made up of a lot of little sources. And in 2022, we're going to decide that, geez, we don't really want to be putting money into, I don't know, things that really, really hurt the planet. There's going to be huge super PACs and huge billionaires funding different politicians to do different things. Yet, gang, the political system only works if we agree to it. Right now, we have half of the country who did not vote for the president that we currently have. And out of that half, there's about a fourth of those people, fourth to a third, depending on which part of the country you're in, who don't even believe that our current president was duly elected. They believe that this was a stolen election and all the things. Well, that may seem incomprehensible to some of us who maybe voted for this president. However, remember the former president, President Trump? There's a lot of people who didn't necessarily believe President Trump was actually elected, that he stole the election and it was appointed. And I think it was a lot closer there, but there was a lot of people who came out and voted for Trump too, however. So there were a lot of people who did. It was just a little weirdly shocking to some. So for the people who voted for Trump, it was weirdly shocking that he didn't win a second time because they couldn't understand why people were so weirded out by his behavior because they voted for him the first time, So all I'm saying here is that in 2022, it's going to be a time frame where all this big money that once ran everything, it's going to, of course, make its gestures and it's going to buy whoever it can in government to do whatever it can. Yet we're going to start really figuring out here, at least in the United States, that we're the ones who actually make up the big money. That the big money, we like to call it grassroots. Oh, grassroots donation, grassroots. It's not grassroots. What's grassroots is going to get gas, and therefore we are all funding the oil companies. That's grassroots too. It just happens to be called commerce. So I find it interesting that we're going to have a slightly different perception on where we're going to put our money and why in 2022. And it doesn't mean that we all have to go crazy and burn down all the refineries and be idiots. I'm just saying that there's going to be a natural predisposition, especially as we hit February, coming in because we've got this Pluto return for the United States. We're going to start to look at everything and think, wow, was this really a good use of my life, of my time, of my money? How do I want to be putting my money out there? And for those of you that are investors, especially people who started investing when President Trump was in office, you'll notice that since he has not been in office, man, we've had COVID. Whenever we have a Democratic president, it's just the rules of weird United States government. The stock market has to tank when we have a Democratic president. The minute we get a Republican president, the stock market sails, and it just goes back and forth and does what it does. I think it literally is in the rule book of the handoff of the parties. And I'm sure there's probably some cycle or system that they've all got set up somewhere of, well, we're going to go and jack up, and the next 4 years we're going to have a Republican president, and we're going to jack up everybody's wealthy IRA accounts and all their stock accounts and their portfolios. Then we'll do that for 4 or 8 years, but really the country can't withstand being ignored that much. So then we're going to put a Democratic president in there for 8 to 16 years and get the whole rest of the country stabilized and get everything, all our social programs and infrastructure taken care of. And then we're going to just smack another Republican back in there and drive way up those and then just go back and forth and back and forth. 2022 is going to be the first year where we really stop running after the big money and blaming it. And we're going to start to realize that we are the money. So this is going to be really interesting because just like the movie Don't Look Up, which again, if you haven't seen it on Netflix, please see it. It's such a fantastic, just caricature, so overt satire in where we're at. And if you haven't seen it, Meryl Streep plays this president that is just quite something. I really don't want to spoil it for you, but this president is so myopic, and it really is what we've been dealing with in the United States. And then there are other characters. There's this guy who plays like a Bill Gates sort of knockoff, and he combines all the tech billionaires and the sociopathy and that into this character that's just a freak show. I mean, it's such a good show. And Leonardo DiCaprio is the scientist, and Kate Blanchett is kind of a cross between Kelly Ripa and Mika Brzezinski as this, I don't know, host of a TV format news thing. Oh my God, it's so funny. So Honestly, just take a look. If you haven't watched, don't look up. Make sure you do, because it really encapsulates what we're up against consciousness-wise. And what you're going to see in 2022 is a consciousness that there's going to, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, gang, but now we're into the place where the consciousness is either going to be on one side of the fence or it's going to be on the other side of the fence. Notice I didn't say political party, because I know Republicans that want to get out there and help their communities and make sure that there are more social programs funded so that people aren't, the taxpayers aren't paying medical bills in the hospitals when people go to the emergency room and can't pay them. I mean, honestly, there's people across the aisle in all directions. I know Democrats who would like to see a much more fiscally responsible budget going out there, because we have the planet to consider. So $800 toilet seats are kind of a problem, and we do need budget oversight. So the idea of the old guard of, well, if you're a Republican, you believe this. If you're a Democrat, you believe that. I think we've pretty much got that in rearview mirror. I mean, even talking about political party gang in 2022 seems ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, doesn't that's so 2015 and 2016 and 2017. So when we're looking forward into what we can look into this year, because folks are going to be dividing off into consciousness. And when I mean dividing off into consciousness, I mean folks are either going to choose to mire into the old world, which is dead and gone, and kind of like, I don't know, fans of MacGyver. They're going to be wearing their mullet wigs, because mullets are back in. But they're not the mullets of the 80s, if you remember. There's this thing called the wolf cut. And if you don't know what it is, you're seeing it all over TV. It's kind of this post-apocalyptic, wow, I fell off the barber chair and I'm not sure how to really stabilize here. And I hope I'm not offending anybody with the wolf cut. I deeply apologize. It's just, you've got to remember, I came up in the 80s where mullets first launched themselves. And the traditional mullet, of course, is one feathered side and another feathered side of hair, and then the back is long. And the guys used to cut the sides of their hair real short and feather it on the sides and then get a perm in the back. All business up front, party in the back. Remember that from the 80s? So now the mullet is called a wolf cut, and they shave the side of the head. So it's just like maybe, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch long. And then they kind of put a bowl on top of your head. Not kidding. It looks like a bowl. And they cut the bangs real short, like halfway down your forehead. Like, when you were 5 and you got a hold of the toenail scissors or the cuticle scissors and thought it'd be a super good idea to cut your own bangs. That's about the length. All right. And it goes right along the bowl. And it goes clear around, like halfway out by your ears. So the bowl edge doesn't just go over your forehead. It goes all the way around the side of your head, over the shaved part, to about the front of your ears. So you can see the shaved part. You got the bowl portion up top, and then it's just long and back. So that's the modern mullet. It's called a wolf cut. True MacGyver devotees are probably going to wear the classic mullet wig, which is more either feathered sides or short cropped sides and spiked hair on top, quite high, really, like little 5-year-olds now, and then long and back. So anyway, you're going to have the MacGyver fans, and then you're going to have the fans on the other side who are out of the 80s, and they're kind of living in the now, and they don't have the MacGyver mullet. They have the wolf cut mullet, because they are in the present, and they are hanging in there with our modern world. And it doesn't matter what political party, you're going to have the folks adhering to the past or the folks adhering to the present. And I wouldn't say the past and the future, because what we're doing in 2022 is building the future. Now, one of the things that is going to receive a steep rise in 2022 is escapism. And I'm seeing a lot of escapism come up. We're either going to have folks who are very dedicated to attempting to better the planet. Either that's through meditative groups, or it's through raising the vibration, or it's through cleaning up city parks or state parks or the ocean. We're going to have people who are really dedicated to being present, being on this plane of existence. And we're going to have a lot of people escaping, either escaping back in time with the MacGyver wigs and going back in time to establish their I don't know, Confederate pockets and their I wish the world was like 1950 pockets. We're going to have those folks. Then we're going to have people who escape and really do a lot of unplugging from the world. And there's really not, this isn't such a bad thing. I mean, you can unplug from the world all you want. I think that's a great idea. Yet just be aware that even if you unplug from it, you still are part of it. What am I talking about? Well, I've noted that as of late, there are a lot of religious movements right now, really recruiting people pretty hardcore. There are some UFO religions out there right now, which are recruiting people like mad to come be part of them. And, I've gotten hit up by a couple of those people thinking because I do speak with off-worlders, that I would be interested in their religion. I don't view off-worlders as a god or mistaken for gods. I think they're just beings out there. I separate my idea of God from all of we corporeal beings doing our thing. So there's that. I'm seeing a lot of metaphysical religions popping up. They don't call themselves religions, though. They're very smart. They usually just stay very focused in a lot of new age terminology, yet they really are asking people to disconnect from the reality and just hang out with them. And that gets a little culty for me. And again, reality is pretty subjective anyway, because all of us have a different reality. Yet I'm noticing there's a lot of new age religions popping up, and there's a lot of new age gurus popping up, a lot of them. And I really noticed this the last year. I'm not sure if everybody sat around in COVID and they were bored, and there were people out there saying, I could be a new age guru. I should launch a Venmo channel or something. So what I notice is that, it's okay to find, let me back up a bit. I got this angel helping me here. It's okay to find wherever your lens is able to interpret the planet. If religion is it, that's excellent. Go for it. I'm not much of a religious person, although I'm a deeply spiritual person, yet I have very religious people in my family who also are very spiritual people. And they prefer the regiment of religion so that they can focus themselves every week, because the frickin' week is too busy. So for them, going to church is a meditation time. It's a time that's just theirs, that they can spend with God, because life is too busy. So what I think is interesting about some of our metaphysical gurus coming out is that many of them are claiming to embody spirits to talk for the spirits. And maybe they are. I'm not saying they're not. Yet I find it fascinating that there are all these people coming forward to say, well, I am embodying this being, and it's an extraterrestrial, and its name is blah, blah. Or I translate angels, gang. Danielle Egnew translated angels. I don't embody angels. They don't possess me. That's not a thing for me. There are many, many, many people online that I've seen, and they make the claim that angels physically come into their body, and then they deliver their messages. That may be true. I'm just saying there are so many people who appear to be giving up their body to other spirit life. And whether or not that's happening is, I'm not here to judge that. I just find it interesting, because one of the great big reasons we're here as human beings is to engage our gray matter and make choices. Not be just taken over by some deity that's going to tell you all the answers and give you all the things you need. The real reason we're here is to institute our free will. It's not to just be taken over and being talked to. And quite honestly, all of us are channels, okay? Every single one of us is a channel. So we're all channeling universal information. We're all translators of this information on some level. Now listen, I am not trying to hack on anybody's favorite guru at all. I am saying it fascinates me that at this time in history, when it is so deeply important that we bring our full presence to this planet, that many popular spiritual teachers, whether it's the UFO gods or angels or other beings or interdimensionals, I mean, there's so many folks out there that are making claims that they are being possessed by these beings. And it's not them talking, it's the beings talking. It's very spiritual movement. It's the spiritualist movement from the 1800s making its way back around. And it reminds me of Jay-Z Knight. Do you remember Jay-Z Knight in the 80s? Linda Evans, the Dynasty actress, she played Crystal Carrington, the original Crystal Carrington. She was a huge, and I believe still is, I don't know if that's a thing, but I think she still is, a huge devotee of Jay-Z Knight. And even down to Linda Evans' hair. You remember her Crystal Carrington hair? She kind of had the flippy bangs and then the kind of long hair that curled and had the flip at the bottom. That was Jay-Z Knight's hair. And Linda Evans was a huge subscriber to Jay-Z Knight, who was a woman who claimed to embody a 30,000-year-old being, I think it was 30 or 20,000-year-old, super old being named Ramtha. So Jay-Z Knight would, she would go into her trance and her head would loll around and Ramtha would come in and Ramtha would talk in this very different voice. And again, I'm not here to prove or disprove if Jay-Z Knight had Ramtha within her body speaking through her. I'm just seeing that this new crop of people who claim to actually physically embody these beings, it's very interesting that there's so many of them. And maybe it's actually happening all over the world, and maybe this is how these beings are trying to get their point across. Yet I find it's interesting that around a lot of these folks who channel these messages, who claim to be possessed by the alien or whatever, not everybody, but many of these folks who claim full possession by these beings also really are somewhat separatist from the rest of the planet. And who cares, man? I mean, because when it comes right down to it, we're all a piece of the puzzle. Everybody has a slightly different way of doing things. And at the end of the day, it's all valid. Yet I would just put a pin in the fact that there's going to be a lot of people coming forward as the earth becomes more, I don't want to say unstable, but unpredictable, claiming to have all the answers because for some reason they have a direct line somewhere that maybe you don't. Okay? And I want to tell you something. That is a bucket of horse pucky. That somebody has some special line that you don't have. And I get it. If somebody has a favorite guru out there and you're really inspired by the person who channels interdimensionals or whatever, super. That's awesome. Use those for good works, okay? Yet the reason I bring this up is because when I look into 2022, I also see a lot more people who are going to be inspired. When I say unplugged from the world, I mean really unplugged from the world, like move into compounds, drop off speaking with loved ones, because the world is going to get kind of scary. And those might be right or left-wing compounds. They might be religious or metaphysical compounds. There's all kinds of things, but people are hunkering in their own way. And when I say that it's important to stay engaged and present in the world, gang, I'm not talking about being part of the low vibration, garbage, negativity, yucky stuff that's out there. I mean, obviously we need to draw a line with really angry, low vibration, nasty, thick stuff out there. We don't need that. Yet if we become so holy and so enlightened that, just me and 7 of my best enlightened friends hang out for the rest of my life on the earth, I mean, will that affect the quantum field? Probably. Will it bring through healing to those that I'm directly interfacing with? Yeah, probably will. Yet, really, the way that we bring this planet into healing is to assist as many as possible in this uplift process. And the uplift process is don't look up is funny. Look up, get your eyes to the skies. Look at all of the incredible possibility we have. Yes, it's going to get a little scary, folks. It is. But guess what? It's better than the alternative. You're upright, you see light, you're breathing, you have a heart to bring into this world. And in whatever way you feel is best for you, all right, please do stay engaged with this plane of existence. You don't have to, yet you are a beautiful, strong creature that's got so many spiritual gifts. Let me back this up a bit. I got this angel kind of helping me out here. Not embodied. I am not embodying the angel. It's just talking over here and I'm translating for it. Okay, so let's just make that a delineation. For me, that's an important delineation because I don't want to mislead anybody to make them think that I do have these beings that have come into my body and blah. I understand that can happen. And I've had some fuzzy, weird lines with that early on, trying to figure out how to be a translator. Yet, they don't want to be in your body, angels. They're like, oh, God, I don't need to possess you. I just want to talk to you. And then I want to get the hell out of here because you mud monkeys make me a little nuts. So here's the deal. So when we're talking about being useful in the world, okay, live wherever you want, subscribe to whatever you want, yet make sure that you are engaging with people to do something beautiful for those people. Again, there are beings on this planet, there are human monks on this planet that do nothing but pray for this existence 24/7. That's all they do is pray. And thank God they're praying because we probably need their prayers. Yet I've got some dear, dear friends of mine. Actually, they live back east, and they are very involved in what I would call, and my friends and I have had this discussion, so I am not talking behind their back, okay? I have had open conversations with them. I even said, would you mind if I reference this on a podcast? And they said, no, go ahead. It's your opinion. It's your podcast. Do what you want. And I love my friends dearly. They're very much like my family. I love them. They subscribe to a belief system that off-world beings are the original gods, like what we thought were gods. Now, I have no doubt that there were UFOs that came and we might have mistaken some of those aliens for gods. It's called Egypt. However, to the degree that my friends believe this, they really believe that they kind of worship a particular being that is translated through a human guy, and this being has a funky name, and this guy's, the being's name is Rael, and so they call him Raelians. And so if you're Raelian, you're part of this religion. It's really a religion that believes that Rael is one of these god aliens, and that they are the original gods. So I think there's a little truth in everything, yet not everything is all truth, right? So my friends really, really believe this. They really believe it, and I don't care that they believe it. Rock on. Rock on. If you're Raelian out there, you know what? Hey, at least you believe in something. How's that? And my friends actually, we got into a conversation because they had a little bit more of a problem that I didn't believe this. And it's really interesting because I honestly, as long as people aren't victimizing other people, I don't care what you believe. It's your life. You do you, okay? Whatever works for you, that's the way that the universe is talking to you. So my friends got a little upset with me because I wouldn't go to this Raelian thing that was happening somewhere in the Northeast. And I was kind of surprised they got upset. And I said, you guys, it's honestly, thank you so much for asking me. It's really not my kink. I don't think I would be an appropriate person there. I don't think I could really appreciate it. And they really were astounded. They said, but you talk to these beings. You've delivered messages to us from these beings. In readings, people have off-world guides, right? And I'm a translator, so there it is. And I said, well, no, that's one thing to translate a message, gang. I really don't feel it's appropriate for me. I don't view these beings as gods or something that we need to elevate in that way. They are our off-world cousins. And part of our job on this earth is to recognize that we're not alone and to also recognize how magnificent the human species is and step up into that magnificence and stop acting like we're a bunch of losers down here, because that is extreme gaslighting by narcissist and sociopathic consumerism and just sociopathic leaders for the last 5,000 years. We are an incredibly adept species. We are here to change the world. We are huge empaths. When we all link in on an incredible level, on that level that is empathically driven, and we Bluetooth to the earth, almost 8 billion of us, we create ripples in the quantum sphere. That's so much consciousness directed. We literally can connect to this earth and turn the earth into a giant bell that just rings in tension all through the multiverses. I mean, we have so much to work with here. So for my understanding of my job in the universe, for me personally, it doesn't resonate that an alien would be a god to me. Now, to my friends, they think my idea of what a higher power would be is some weird, they think I actually worship the white guy in the throne, which I don't. But that Christian idea of a god, they think that's weird. So they were a little bummed out that I wasn't able, or I didn't choose to go to this big thing. And they said, well, we can pay for it. You could be a guest speaker. Everybody, you would really be treated like royalty because you interface with these beings. And I said, well, thank you so much. That's very gracious. Yet I don't think I should be treated like royalty because these beings will talk to all of us. And I just have a really hard time elevating beings, since we all are a being. And I have a bit of a hard time when people, very beautiful, well-meaning, God bless their hearts people, elevate me. I have a really hard time with that. I'm like, guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're so sweet. Yeah, you can do what I can do. I'm just one example yakking on a microphone. We can all do this, right? I'm not super unique in my abilities here. I will say I am really unique, highly unique in my ability to come up with a recipe for a leisure suit in 2022. Now, I'm going to give myself credit there, okay? So anyway, I'm just getting to the fact that it's very important that we engage and not disconnect in 2022. So my friends kind of started getting a little crispy. And again, they gave me permission to tell this story because we've worked it all out and now we think it's funny. But they started to get real itchy with me because I got the vaccine. This was after I wasn't going to do the Raelian thing, the get-together. And so my friends were saying, well, maybe it's because you got the vaccine and it's not allowing you to ascend and the vaccine is keeping you suppressed. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? God bless you, but what the hell are you talking about? And, they went on to explain that they believe that the vaccine alters our DNA to keep us from ascending. They truly believe that the vaccine does something to keep us in this fear level, that it messes with our DNA so that we cannot go to 5D or 7D, which actually 5 dimensions and 7th dimension progression is a consciousness issue. It's not like it's necessarily going to affect our 3rd dimensional physics. It will in the case that we raise our own vibration and therefore the 3rd dimension runs smoother, if that makes sense. Yet they really just couldn't accept that I just had a different belief system than they did. And I didn't care that they did, but they really cared that my belief system was different from theirs. And I was a little surprised because my thinking is if you're a person whose belief system is highly unique, then there should be that old common sense crumb over here that says, yeah, people are probably going to think I'm nuts. I don't think they're nuts. I just don't agree that aliens are gods, okay? That ETs are gods. So, and that's fine. Who cares what I think? God, it's whatever. It was just my opinion. However, this really set my friends off. So it got into a discussion of who is going to ascend and who's not going to ascend. And I really found this portion, and I did tell my friends, I found this portion a little disturbing because I thought, do you really think a vaccine can keep people's consciousness from shifting? Because that's just not possible. Our consciousness is spiritual. Yes, our DNA is getting augmented by all kinds of things all the time. I got the Moderna vax, so the mRNA technology is doing whatever it's doing in my body. Guess what else? I go out and I breathe pollution, and that DNA inside of me is constantly trying to translocate and fix itself because of DNA damage I'm doing to it on this planet. Our DNA is shifting all the time, okay? Yet what's going to unlock the bottom portions of our DNA, because what is it, 21 rungs it has? And really the only the first 10 rungs of our DNA is information that runs our body, right? Breath, having babies, repairing bones, cell growth, trauma memories, how to keep yourself safe, don't get eaten by a bear. That's really in those top 10 rungs. The bottom, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, but this is really important with where we're at right now. Those bottom rungs, and I've been saying this for 15 years. In 2019, medical science finally came out and said, guess what? Those bottom rungs of DNA aren't junk. They respond not to chemical cues, not to RNA cues like the first 10 rungs of DNA do. They respond to frequency. We hit those bottom rungs of DNA with certain frequencies, and they opened up and they coughed up very important information to those top level chromosomes up there. And they translocated, they swapped information. And they did miraculous things, and people healed miraculously. Tones, vibration, resonance, frequency. I've been saying that for 15 years. It's other people who've been saying the same thing. I'm not the only one. Yet, oh my goodness, finally medical science figured out that it's vibration. So here are my friends who are telling me that I don't quite get why this movement of elevating off-worlders to the status of God, I'm not understanding it well enough because I'm basically withheld, I'm suppressed because I got a vaccine. So I'm not basically not ascended enough. And I was just like, you guys, are you hearing yourself? This is a little odd. Yet, instead of just saying, wow, okay, Danielle, that's cool. That's cool. You've got a slightly different belief system. You believe in aliens. You don't believe they're gods. That's cool. I could see why that might get a little awkward if we're doing kind of the God thing here. But hey, if you ever want to come out sometime and just spot UFOs and hang out with everybody, we'd love to have you. I would have said, sure, I would love to. So my friends and I have since had a big laugh about, the vaccine suppressing me and not allowing me to ascend and all the things. We kind of worked through that. And they did admit that they got their feelings a little hurt and felt defensive. And so they kind of took the low road and were trying to think of why I wouldn't be into things. They felt like I was judging them, which I was not. It's just not a belief system I share, but I surely don't judge anybody. Do your thing, man. So it's important. The reason I bring this up is my friends have becoming more and more, and also we've talked about this, my friends and I, they have become more and more disconnected from the rest of the planet. And I got concerned, and I brought to their attention at one point, I said, I'm really afraid you guys are joining a cult. And they said, well, don't be afraid of that. I mean, people can come and go as they please. And I said, well, I'm sure they can, yet, you're kind of only living with people that believe what you believe. You guys sold a bunch of your own personal property to donate to this center. And that's fine. It's your own property. Do what you want. I just really hope that it's something, it's like a frog that's boiled a quarter of a degree at a time, right? So, and they've been involved in this for a long time, like 12 years. And it's what they're really passionate about. So that, and they're like, no, we sold our property to be part of this center because this center takes care of people who don't have food and housing. I said, okay, well, that's excellent. And we don't have to all just keep our property and no matter, you can do what you want with your property. Yet there was a separatist movement there. And then when they went down the road of, well, but you're not special like us because you didn't get your shot, which now we're going to make T-shirts that says #I'm not special, which I think is funny. So I tell you this story, and like I said, I told my friends I was going to tell this story, and they're like, please do, because if anybody can learn through our odd situation, it would be good. Because you're going to be needed in this world. And whatever your belief system is, whatever anchors you to consciousness that's elevated, go for it. Yet if anyone is trying to convince you that you don't have the right to ascend or you can't ascend or if ascend is part of the sentence and you're being judged with that, that's virtue signaling. That's where we're starting to create a caste system of the holier than thous. And that goes back to basic Christianity. That goes back to the Catholic Church, that says, unless you do this and this and this many Hail Marys and put this much money in the pot, you don't get to go to heaven. You're going to get stuck in purgatory. So the earning your way to ascension thing, gang, it's important that we clear our brains and that we look positively and with joy on our life. And that we help others and we put our hands in the world and Bluetooth to this beautiful mother that we live upon. And I understand hanging out with like-minded and like-spirited people. I really do get that. I have folks in my life that as I've gone on in my own spiritual journey, I don't talk to as much because we don't have as much in common. I love them dearly. And maybe they think I'm some metaphysically cult weirdo. I don't know. But I feel like that's different than disconnecting from the world and deciding everybody but you is going in the direction that's ascension. Because quite frankly, gang, the whole planet is resonating. Everybody is trying to ascend. Some folks are uncomfortable with that process. Whether they want to or not, there's a lot of resonant frequency changes in everybody's DNA that's pushing us all up. There's going to be some folks that maybe don't want to get on the elevator. Okay, fine. Yet in 2022, I would just highly encourage you to please keep part of your feet on the ground, okay? Because we need you here. And if we're all just going to stick a nickel in our shoe and run off and hope somebody else fixes it, then we're going to get what we deserve, which is a lot of abandoned planet going to hell under the rule of crazy people with a lot of money. I had another friend who looked at me when I was explaining this concept, and my friend said, "Wow, you're in a lot of fear." And I said, "Actually, no, I am not afraid at all. I just have no problem weighing the good with the bad. I have no problem looking at the dark with the light. Do I know the light's going to win? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's because I stand in the dark sometimes and I allow the shine to happen. If we don't stand in the dark once in a while and allow the shine to happen, we can't make a difference, gang. And I don't care who is your person who inspires you to do beautiful things in the world. Honestly, you're going to laugh. Some of you are going to laugh when I tell you this. Yet I have friends of mine who are massive, just fanatical fans of Donald Trump. They do not see him in the same way that I may. And I don't hate the guy. I don't even know the guy. Yet I'm not a fan of his behavior as much, right? Maybe he's a super nice person in reality. I don't know. However, what I've seen of his public person is someone who I would not probably agree with on a lot of things. I have friends who believe he is the shizzle, you guys. Really, truly. Really, truly. And those friends that believe he's the shizzle are super inspired by him. And what they're inspired to do is to take their money and spend it on other people. They're inspired to invest in their community centers. They're inspired to do incredible things as if they were the mogul with all the money because that's who they see him as. They see him donating his money back to the United States, okay? I don't necessarily have that same opinion. Yet the point of me bringing that up, and it really doesn't matter what my opinion is with my friends' take on Donald Trump. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is that that's a fulcrum that inspired them. And what are they actually doing in the world? They're doing good work. It reminds me of C.S. Lewis, the C.S. Lewis book, The Last Battle, the Narnia series, The Last Battle. And this really burned into my consciousness. As a little 8-year-old, my mom would read me the Chronicles of Narnia before I'd go to bed. And it was magical. And we got to the last battle. And everybody's hanging out in Narnia. The wicked witch, the white witch the white witch is dead. And Aslan, who is the Christ figure basically, but Aslan has completely returned Narnia to a paradise like heaven, right? And everybody's hanging out together. And there was this god in the Narnia books called Tash. And Tash was like the devil. And the followers of Tash were nasty and they killed people and they were just bad people. They were, what we'd think of as a, quote, bad person, right? So this really stuck with me. There was some of the characters in Narnia, and they're wandering around with Aslan, and all of a sudden, one of them looks over and they see this follower of Tash's army. And Tash, this Tash follower was still in the Tash follower uniform, the Tash army uniform with the sword and the whole thing. And the kids in the Narnia book freak out and they say, Aslan, how can that be possible? This person killed all these people. This person followed Tash, and Tash is evil. What is this Tash follower doing in Narnia, doing in paradise, doing in heaven? And Aslan says, that person right there was following me, although they called it Tash. And that really just hit me as an 8-year-old. I'm like, oh man, that means that good people are good people, and they might get sucked into wonky modalities, but they're good people, and good people win in the end. This is my little 8-year-old brain, right? Putting this all together at the Chronicles of Narnia when I'm a kid. And so we don't need to judge people by what motivates them to do good works in the world. That's a very old world modality. Being ascended, being someone who is in a higher vibration, means that we look at the works the person does in the world, and if they're glorious works, we exude joy for the glorious works they're putting into the world. Now, if they're secretly doing terrible things to do those good works, that's a different story, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's time to give the judgment away, people, okay? And it's really important that you're real with yourself coming up in this next year about why you are adhering to any modality of belief or thought. And if it takes you out of being of service in the world, and all of a sudden it's asking you to be of service to it and it alone, then that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing, because you are needed, all right? So there's a fine line between being judgy about people's belief systems and looking at a belief system that then becomes the thing the person is supposed to worship, as opposing to putting their gifts and talents into the world. Let us all have grace and kindness with one another and the many belief systems that are going to come forward in this time frame. Let us all hold the hearts of one another so high and recognize that we are all resonating at a higher frequency right now. Some folks are trying not to, yet the reason some folks are so freaking gritchy is because the whole ether sphere, our whole entire dimension, is resonating higher. And for some people who've only known a low, dense vibration, that's scary, man. It's like having a ringing in your ears you can't ever get rid of. So let's have some compassion for folks. Let's recognize that no matter what your belief system is, as long as you're not secretly victimizing others to look fabulous in the front, I like to call that the Sunday Christian, the Sunday Christian that beats his wife all during the week, but then gets to Sunday church and is just a sterling person. We don't need to be hypocritical. Yet let us have some grace with one another in 2022. And let us look at the good works in the world. The good works in the world. Let us look at that. And let us pay attention to the beauty in everyone. And if you have somebody in your life that wants you to decide that others are not ascended enough or good enough, or maybe they didn't get a vaccine, so they're a horrible person, or they did get a vaccine, so they're a horrible person. Whenever someone is trying to convince you to marginalize another person to elevate the group that person belongs to, that's a problem. So let us go and really be part of the solution. Keep your hands in the world, please. Please keep your hands in the world. I understand if you're a Buddhist monk and your calling is just to pray, that's a whole different bailiwick. Yet with the number of, I'm going to call them Messiah promisers that we have coming out in 2022, 23, 24, and 25, and there's going to be a crap ton of them. A crap ton. If that's someone that inspires you, that's awesome. Yet, stay in the world, please. Keep your feet on the ground. Terra firma. Mother Earth needs you. This is not the time of escapism. This is the time of elevation in consciousness and in thought, where we can then take that elevation take our brilliance through to this planet, lift one another up, praise one another for the gifts and talents that we have, and begin to change the world from the terra firma level up. And guess what? When the change comes from the ground up, big money really has a very hard time affecting that. So, this is a Very Dance podcast. Keep your hands in the world, keep your head in the clouds, keep your heart in the earth. And if our heart's in the earth, our hands are in the dirt, our heads in the heavens, and our eyes are on the horizon. It's a pretty good mix, gang. And I will see you next podcast.